for everything you've done the last 24 hours trying to keep us on track.
Oh, you're welcome. That's what my job is, I think.
It's a difficult job. I don't know that very many people realize what a complex job you have trying to keep 9 clocks beating on the same time. So,
Well, thank you for the compliment. It's really not that bad.
so I see we'll get started in a couple of minutes. I see Dr. Rennie, Mr. Johnson, Dr. Aldridge, Mr. Laybourne. Do we know if Mr. Escobar will be joining us today?
You know, I'm sorry I haven't heard from him, but I think he did say he was going to Zoom. I don't think Brian will be here.
Right. I think he just got back or is getting back.
Mhm.
So I think he did say he was unavailable today.
It's Councilman Escobar. I'm here.
Oh, great. Mr. Escobar joined us. We still have another minute and then we'll get started. Okay, Verizon time is showing me noon, so we'll go ahead and call the October 15th, 2021 work session to order. Today's topic is Cheyenne's American Rescue Plan funding. As is always the practice, questions or public comment and questions from the public will not be heard during the work session. One quick note for those who may not have heard, who are listening, the city building is closed for an indeterminate amount of time. As such, both the Finance Committee and Public Services Committee meetings next week will be held at the Kiwanis Community House. Finance is Monday at noon. Public Service is Tuesday at noon. And we don't have a firm plan yet on the full meeting of council on October 25th. We're working on that and we will get notice out just as soon as we have something confirmed. But everybody will need to be patient for the next couple of weeks while repairs are made to the boilers. And, you know, I know technology is not the most ideal way to conduct city business, but we've done it before. And for about 9 months we did it, so we can get through a couple of weeks. With that, I will turn it over to Renee Smith, our city grants manager, and you'll kick us off. So, Ms. Smith, thank you for joining us today. I know this is a topic we're all interested in, so go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. To everybody who is joining us today from the panel, please feel free to jump in if you've got questions. My goal today is to give a rounded picture of the American Rescue Plan, the money that we received, and how we should thoughtfully proceed as far as spending it. So this is sort of what I'd like to cover today, just a really quick executive summary. I did meet with the department directors to get some feedback, and I think moving forward, there will be additional work sessions to kind of go over the projects that are most important to them that may fit the eligible uses of the American Rescue Plan. There are a lot of frequently asked questions, examples readily available everywhere. We've tried to compile it all into one comprehensive presentation today, but there's a lot. So if there's something I've missed, or if you want questions or more details on any of it, please let me know. I will get back to you if I can't answer you today, but I will definitely get back to you moving forward. I'm going to talk really quickly about the timeline that we have to spend this, and then what our reporting requirements are expected to be. So to date, we did get notification we were going to receive a little over $12 million. We received the first half earlier this year. The second half is scheduled to come in May of 2022. And the way they've put it together is we can use this money for expenses that have been incurred as of March 3rd of this year, 2021. They must be spent or obligated by 2024, December 31st. So we can have it obligated for projects that continue until December 31st, 2026. So that kind of opens the window a little bit for some of these bigger projects that may take a little bit longer to get through the process. This is the nitty gritty. It's a beast of a spreadsheet, but it kind of talks a little bit about, you'll notice the numbers 1 through 7 on the left-hand side. Those are the categories that the Department of Treasury has given us that we have to fit our expenses into each one of those expenditure categories. So it goes from public health, and that relates to a whole list of things: negative economic impacts, services to impacted communities, and on through that. So when we got the original 12 million, the Department of Treasury did release an interim final rule that gave us some direction as to how we should look at that pot of money and start putting them in buckets as to what their use is expected to be. We're expected to show that we've used the money in these different buckets. So we sort of created a budget based on that. Some of this is wiggle room, some is set in stone. So that revenue replacement recovery, that is the dollar amount that Robin worked with the auditor to determine what we claimed as revenue recovery, or revenue lost over the last year. So that there is no wiggle room in that pot of money, but how we moved everything else to fit into that. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we came up with the cumulative or allocated expenditures to date. I know Robin provided a quick little bucket presentation for you to go a little bit deeper. That negative economic impact allocation basically is coming from that 708,000. That's the RIFT staff that we rehired. We were able to claim that, but what we're intending to do is, because we're reclaiming that, we can throw that back into the available pot of money. So that's where that 708 comes from. We've got services to impacted communities. We're tentatively budgeting 1.2 million. That kind of can address the homelessness situation, affordable housing, things like that. Premium pay, that's another one that was a something that we did not have. It was just what the numbers came to be. So we've allocated that to replace the money that the city had already allocated for the premium pay for our employees. When you look at plan administration, that basically, they were allowing us to take an expense for just administering these funds. And that's the rate that the city typically allocates for from a grant perspective. So those are the monies that we were able to roll back into the revenue replacement fund, that 708,000, and the admin fund. We can reuse that as part of the revenue replacement. And those funds are typically, there's a broad spectrum of how that money can be used. So when we're the money that we've basically put them into two separate buckets. that have to all roll into these. And I know this is a little bit confusing, so please shoot me any questions you have. I'm going to talk a little bit about the buckets and how the money can be spent for projects that fit into those categories. So basically, I'm calling it restricted and unrestricted. That's the easiest way to look at those pockets of money. That revenue recovery pot of money that we've allocated, there's $4.7 million. And basically, there's a very broad latitude. It's theoretically unrestricted in how we can spend it. We do have to make sure that it is for the provision of government services, infrastructure, security, any needs that have been identified from the pandemic as far as being able to perform services. What have we discovered that our community as a whole could benefit from if we implemented different strategies? So it really, it cannot be used to pay debt, reimburse pensions. So that's when I say unrestricted. It cannot be used for those things. The economic recovery bucket, basically those need to be non-recurring expenditures. That's why we're calling them restricted. It cannot be an ongoing expense. The way the interim final rule kind of gave us this direction is they've allowed different justifications, I guess you could say, for it when what we're calling a recurring or a non-recurring expenditure. Public safety has some things that maybe could be more ongoing than others. Some technology needs that have been identified. As we're sitting here on Zoom today, we have identified a number of technology needs that would allow the city to perform services within our own workability, but also to the community, to be able to allow our citizens to pay bills online, to communicate online. Those are things that have been identified as needs directly from the pandemic and people working remotely. They can also be used for water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure projects. That falls into that economic recovery budget. Mr. Chair, do you have any questions at this point?
I don't, but I'm going to open it up and ask my colleagues if there are any questions. And I see
Sure.
Dr. Aldridge did have one. Could the unrestricted be used to pay what will be our share for the fire pension? Is this the fund we have talked about using to help mitigate the homeless issues?
Well, the homeless issues, the money could technically be attributed to both the revenue recovery and the economic recovery, as it does fall into that one line item of service to underserved communities, and homelessness is specifically in that bucket. It cannot be used for pensions, for replacement of pension funds.
And I see Treasurer Lockman was going to say something. Robin? You're muted. Oh, yeah. Nothing's coming over. Weird. So now we're back to this.
Does it answer the question?
We'll try to get that fixed. Are there any other questions from any council members at this point? Doesn't look like it, so please proceed.
All right. So the big picture, and I think this is one of the most important things for the governing body to bear in mind as they're going through the process of listening to the expressed needs and trying to determine how do we really be impactful in our communities. And so these were the guiding principles. I wanted to include this in this slide because everything that we do needs to fall into this. Be transformational, solve an ongoing problem. I I think that we get sometimes it's the urgent needs that get the attention, and we miss the bigger picture. This is a really good opportunity to look at the bigger picture and see where can we plug in systemic changes that will really impact our community. I mentioned before one-time uses. We don't want to fund anything that's going to have an ongoing obligation after the term of this grant for this city. That is not an allowable expense. So keep that in mind as we're trying to figure out how we're going to spend this. Obviously, it's addressing health and safety, building resiliency. That's one of their biggest. The Department of Treasury, should something like this happen again, or as we are still ongoing dealing with COVID, keep in mind, how can we build resiliency as a community? And I think, again, we're talking about the technology. Do we have the resources allocated to do a response necessary to, that will have an impact on our city without taking steps backwards? Equitability is, I know it's a buzz term with a lot of the American Rescue Plan, but that really is a priority for this administration. It's providing relief for disadvantaged, underrepresented citizens. So when you look at Cheyenne, and we're looking at where we can put money into some of our communities that will bolster where they haven't been able to see that that influx of economic recovery. So think about things like that when you're looking through at your wards, what you're hearing from your constituents, what are they most concerned about, and how can we use this money to address those concerns? Really, we need to be very conscious about being data-driven and how we're spending this money. We need to take the time to listen, collect information, put it all together, and really use that to determine where we're spending these funds. I know data is challenging, and it's another component of what we do on a daily basis as a municipality. How are we collecting data to make decisions? And that's something that I have to report on that. I have to report what data did we use. We already are asked from some other grantors, why did you make that decision? How did you choose to spend the money that way? What data? So that it's important. So I would really appreciate just from you all as a whole, if you can keep that in mind, take notes from what you're hearing from your constituents. I need that information because that's what I will have to report on. Projects that are shovel ready. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Renee. There are a couple of questions.
Sure.
And I just wanted to note that both Mr. Cook and Mr. Seagrave are on this call. Dr. Aldridge had a couple of questions, and I don't know if either you or Robin or maybe Mr. Andy Warshak could answer this one. I don't think Mayor Collins is on this call. But has there been any discussion with the county commissioners to do joint projects that will benefit our community and county? Correct me if I'm wrong, but the commissioners received their own pot of money, did they not?
Correct. They received 20 million. And I do know the mayor is working with them on at least one project. I don't know the scope, and I have not seen anything coming out of the county as to how they're thinking about allocating their funds. But I do know that that is a way for us to leverage ours, is to work. I think homelessness is one of the issues they're working on collaboratively to share that money. If we both pitch in, we can have a bigger impact. So they are working on that.
Right. And I know homelessness was one topic of conversation they were having. I did not know about any others.
Yeah, I don't either.
The second question was, can we use funds for public health to free up the monies in our general fund that had been committed to public health in our current budget?
That's tricky because again, when we're talking about one-time uses and the goal is not to replace your general budget. That is not how the Treasury wants you to spend this money on existing needs or existing things that were already budgeted for. We cannot supplant this money into existing things that have already been budgeted. Does that make sense? And Robin, you might be able to change, and text me, Robin, if you need me to say.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I switched microphones, so thank you, Michael. Yes, you are correct, Renee.
Great. Okay, so Renee, you were on the shovel
I am
ready.
on shovel ready. So again, it's projects that, and again, the Department of Treasury, there is a caveat to shovel ready also. And also for items that were in the system that were already budgeted for. The only way you can use American Rescue Plan money is, say you had a project that was in the books, say, and they specifically used parks and recreation, outdoor recreation. If they were tabled because of COVID and you didn't get them done, you can then go and use your American Rescue Plan money to finish those projects. So that is a little side note of existing projects, existing budgets. So I think every case is different, and that's something that we're just going to have to really navigate slowly and carefully so that we're not spending in a way that's going to come back to bite us in the future. So shovel ready projects, again, one-offs. You can have big projects, small projects, but things that are ready to go and aren't going to have to go through years of planning. It should not be something to do, that's futuristically in the plans. To close funding gaps, when they're looking at industries that experience negative economic impacts, they were primarily looking at tourism, travel and tourism that may have experienced significant revenue loss. There is also the side note, if you happen to live in a community that, in addition to travel and tourism, there's another very strong industry that experienced loss, you can use your funds in that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be travel and tourism, if that makes sense. And again, we will have to work with the state and the county with our projects and make sure that we're not duplicating. And if any way possible, let's leverage our funds. So as we go forward, the communication is going to have to be critical. And that's where you all will come in to help with that. So this we can talk, go ahead.
Makes sense. There is a question from Mr. Johnson. Can you cover the topic about tree removal assistance program we discussed? Since this was constituent driven, has anything changed in the last month?
No, I actually have it budgeted. So when I met with the directors, that was one of the things I brought to the table as something that came directly, just for everybody's information, so you're aware. We do have a number of constituents who are getting citations for trees overlapping the sidewalks, the roads. It's expensive, and our residents, a lot of them can't afford tree trimming. So what we're proposing, which is directly in line with the negative economic impact, and using funds to help, people in our community who can't afford to do this. So we would like to subsidize the tree trimming. Let's set aside a certain amount of money and say, hey, we'll pitch in this much if you pitch in this much, or however the city wants to do this, but we can subsidize the cost of the tree trimming, and let's get this taken care of and start over. So that was an urban forestry project that is up for consideration for use of funds. And I really think it was a fairly small amount initially, between 20,000, 150,000. To get this rolling. We really don't know. It's sort of an innovative approach to a need that we're experiencing as a city. So it would be interesting as a pilot program to see how that rolls out for Cheyenne. So that is, did that adequately
I
explain?
think that answered the question.
Okay.
Go ahead. Mr. Cook, welcome back. And go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. Renee, I don't know if this would fit or not, so I just thought I would ask it. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm shadowy. I'm in a sunny room in my house. I apologize for that. Anyway, so Renee, you know, if you recall, last March when we had the extreme snowstorms, there was a lot of you know, the mayor had to contract with outside crews and outside contractors to help us with some of that snow removal. And, you know, there was damage to plows, there was, you know, that kind of stuff. And honestly, with this week's weather, you know, we know some of that stuff is coming. Could any of these funds potentially be used, I guess, for upgrading, repairing, you know, some of that equipment, but as well as giving the mayor, I guess, a nest egg to use in case we do come across one of those situations where he does have to go with contractors to assist us again, because I know, you know, that was something, you know, we sort of had to scramble to find those funds. So I'm just, I guess that's the first thing that comes to mind with winter coming is, you know, maybe that would be a good place for some investment of some resources, but I might be alone in that thinking.
Renee, any answers?
Sure.
To
Well,
that?
keep in mind that these funds have to be spent by a certain amount of time. They can retroactively go back to March 3rd, which I do. So I do think as far as maintenance and repair, you've got your unrestricted pot of money that can be used essentially for anything. Can he have a stockpile? Probably not, but you can allocate a sum of money. But what, you know, just keep in mind that at the end of a certain, you know, by our budget end timeline, that money has to be spent. So I think that's a little trickier as having a pot of money, but yes, you can use it for repairs and replacement of equipment.
Thank you, Renee. That's all I had right now, Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Any other questions before Renee proceeds? Because I know,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Councilman Escabel, I have one.
Mr. Escabel.
Okay, I'm thinking about what's currently going on with the problem we're having with the boiler. And that's infrastructure, it's health and safety, one-time funding. How would something like that problem fit into this?
I actually had already budgeted for the original that came through before we realized that we may possibly need to replace the boiler. There was the cleaning of the ducts, things like that. There is, as part of the public health piece, it's making sure that your city and municipal buildings are safe, and technically this falls under that. And so it can't, I believe we can use either pot of money for that.
Oh, that's good. All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Renee, go ahead, because I know we've yet to hear from Robin. So go ahead and proceed, and then when you're done, we'll open it back up for questions.
Surely. Okay. So when we're talking unrestricted revenue recovery, we've sort of touched on this a little bit. Again, very broad latitude. There's $4.7 million available. We don't have all of it now. We'll have, you know, but we can allocate and plan projects for these funds. And I don't know, you probably had time to read it. Maintenance of infrastructure, PAYGO spending for building new infrastructure, roads, modernization of cybersecurity, hardware, software, health services, environmental remediation. Again, that's why I feel like the municipal building falls into there. School and educational services, public safety, all of that we can broadly be used. When you're looking at infrastructure, this is where you can do the bigger projects for infrastructure, where if you're looking at the restricted pot of money, and we'll talk about that in a second, but infrastructure for this one can be roads. Anything that does not fall under water, sewer, and broadband would come under this category. So the restricted money there is 2.7. It's going to go fast. When I told you I met with the directors and I love them all and they worked very hard on their lists, I think we came in with $25 million in projects. So I admire their optimism. I think what fell into this too is everybody's working on their capital improvement plan stuff. And so it was a very nice, workable conversation that we've been having about what are our priorities? How do we really spend this 2.7 million? And these 4 categories we cannot stray from them. And that's where your 1 through 7, those we have to be able to categorize every expense. Responding to public health emergency or its negative economic impacts. This is where anything that we're doing, the urban forestry fall under here, the homelessness, affordable housing, all of that ties directly to the economic recovery for our community. The essential workers, I leave that mostly up to Robin because it's all in her accounting wheelhouse. Where those funds play out. And for the provision of government services, and I put in there to the extent of the reduction in revenue, because we do have to figure out, again, what's a true response to the COVID pandemic and what and what we have identified as needs. And again, I know I referenced this before, but the software technology and equipment probably was the #1 request across the board from most of the departments. And I think because this is the time for us to be able to do business smarter. So that falls under that provision of government services. And then water, sewer, and broadband. Again, those are fairly large projects with a big price tag. And so that may be something we can work with the county on as well. So these are things, keep in mind. If you can answer these questions, we can spend it. Can you clearly state that the need has occurred as a result of COVID? Has it been identified? And then was revenue lost? We have a number of revenue generating departments and they did experience significant loss. I forgot to let you know, we had to redo all of our numbers in the last 2 days because we were just informed that we will receive additional supplemental grant money from the shuttered venue of another $455,000. So that grant total for the Civic Center was $1.365 million.
That's
So
excellent news.
it is. So the money we are allocating, we had allocated for that revenue recovery now goes back into your allowable expenses. And that's why that number actually grew. So that's exciting. I think that to be able to do something with these funds that is meaningful is a great opportunity. So, and I put in here those 5, was there a question? No? Okay.
I don't think there's a question yet.
I think I'm just lagging myself. I don't know. But there's, 5,
One thing, could you please email this presentation to all of council when we're done?
Absolutely.
With this today? Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And I have other kind of, they're probably 5 to 6 pages with a little bit more of the examples of how you can spend it. I can email that to you as well if you'd like. So we need to keep these expenses into the categories of public health, negative economic impact, services to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay, and infrastructure. That's your restricted pot of money. It has to stay within those categories, however we choose to do this. I basically put these slides together as more examples of these different categories and pots of money: PPE, testing, safety infrastructure enhancements, behavioral health. We've had a number of questions or input from public safety for some projects or things that can be used that fall into that behavioral health and public safety. The economic impact there, even though it's restricted, there's quite a bit of justification for it. I mean, they're looking at outdoor recreation. Well, because of COVID, we were spending more time outdoors. We've seen a dramatic increase in water usage in our parks, some damage in our parks, things like that. So that direct or indirect effect of COVID on what our city expenses are, that's something to look at as far as if you're really looking at data. How did it change between 2019 and 2020? How is it changing now in 2021? Where are we seeing more shortfalls, I guess, and where we had budgeted and how the budgets are changing? Those are things to think about when you're looking at economic impact. Assistance to households. I'm not sure how the city wants to do this. Because we really didn't, a lot of the larger cities received millions and millions of dollars. We have a relatively small pocket of money. So it's really hard to do a blanket across the board assistance. So we really have to be mindful of getting bang for your buck and reaching as many citizens as we can with the projects we select. It cannot be used for general development or workforce development. This is sort of the definition of essential workers, which is very broad. And that may give us some more direction in how we're spending it, because I think as far as city employees or city services, we do have quite a bit of interaction with essential workers. And did I skip a page? No. Okay, so infrastructure. I wanted to make sure I included that last paragraph. That will tell you everything you need to know about what they're determining as water and sewer. As long as if it complies with the Clean Water Act, it's considered water and sewer. So it can be used for point source pollution, wastewater treatment systems, stormwater systems, water conservation, efficiency. All of that falls under this infrastructure. And we do have a lot of city projects that we probably could spend all of our money right here, just right here. So it's going to be a little more challenging, I think. Again, that's another place maybe we can share projects with the county, I'm hoping. Broadband. I think there was one request for broadband. And I don't know how this fits in with what the city does. That's my ignorance, so I apologize. So the department approach, when I met with them, their task was, I need your priorities. I want a 1 through 5. I need to know what you have identified as your number one priority. What were they? How did you come to those determinations? And what solution did you find? So I did have all of that. I have all of that information that I gathered. I think going forward, the mayor has recommended maybe we schedule some more work sessions where they are allowed to sit with you and say, here's what we've identified, and here's why we feel this is a solution that really meets this need. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, because I think they speak much more eloquently than I would on what they've identified. But they really have given a thoughtful approach to, and tried, a lot of them tried to work across departments to where what they've identified will work for not just their department, for other departments as well, which is really beneficial. So best practices. evaluate each project. So we really need to be careful, and we need to evaluate the cost for eligibility. I think that is probably going to be our trickiest thing. The questions that are coming in, can we use it for this? Can we use it for this? I will do some pretty deep dives because I want to be able to tag the line item where I found the justification in the interim final rule or guidance from the Treasury to say, yes, we can, or no, we can't. I won't just say yes or no. I will give you a reason why that this is my position. It won't just be, because I think so. So I will work really hard to make sure you have as much information as you need to make these decisions. We need to be accountable, and it needs to be visible. The Treasury would like to see this all on our website. They want our citizens to know that we are being as thoughtful as we can with these dollars, and they want to have feedback from our constituents. So when you're in your wards, direct them to the website. Maybe we need to have a button where they can submit a request or submit a comment, where we can start collecting that information. It's probably not always going to be pretty, but it's important. It's part of the conversation I think we can have as a city for what they feel the needs are, and then how do we work together as a community to address them, be inclusive and be strategic. And that's all I have today.
Well, thank you, Renee, and Jen communicated with me. She has the presentation, so Jen McClellan will email that out to all of us. You don't need to worry about that. Quick question, and thank you again,
Sure.
and for all the other work that you do. Robin, I do have a question to that last point. Is there a plan in place to include some of these things on the city website? Because I think it's a good idea. Anything that we can do to be as transparent as possible to show that we're being good stewards of this money, I think it's very important that we do so.
Yes, Mr. President, absolutely. We do have a new grants page that Renee has put together that we can certainly somehow link to the front page. I don't know if Michael Skinner can help out with that, but yes, we can definitely do that.
That's really good news. Questions for Renee from council? Michael, did you have something to add to that?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I can definitely help get that information easily findable on our website. There is an option for us to also create a form, if you will, to solicit information, ideas from the public that we could also promote and share with folks. And then we can have that sent to a dedicated employee who would receive all that information or all those forms. So that is definitely possible.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Questions from council for Renee, or specific questions for Robin? Dr. Aldrich wants to thank you for your work on this, Renee. I echo that. And it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be, was it? One thing that you mentioned, Renee, I think it's a really good idea that we have additional work sessions. I would advise any departmental directors who kind of want to explain their reasoning behind why we should spend some of this money on a particular area to get with Jen McClellan. We do have a couple of we have another work session scheduled this month. We do already have a couple scheduled for next month. So the whole issue with that is availability. So by communicating with Jen McClellan, we can iron that out and get those discussions scheduled.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Would you, I'm not sure what the plan is, but would you like, before we do the work sessions, to get like a compiled list of all the departmental requests? Or do you want to wait until you're given the presentation?
Well, I don't want to add too much workload, but I think that would be helpful for members of council to have some type of reference tool like that. before we have more extensive discussions.
Okay,
I do have that put together, so I can make sure that you all get a copy of it.
And to your point, Renee, I mean, this is an opportunity for members of council to take this to our constituents. I know Ward 3 has a monthly discussion at DASBOG Coffee. I've been meaning to communicate with Mr. Labor and Mr. Roybal about doing another Ward 1 discussion. So, I mean, this is a chance for us to do that as well, to communicate with our folks. Any other questions for Renee or Robin before we adjourn?
President,
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Escobar, one final thing.
Wait, Mr. Escabel, Mr. Seagrave chimed in just before you did, so we'll go to Mr. Seagrave and then I'll come back to Mr. Escabel. Go
Okay.
ahead, Mr. Seagrave.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. What about the interest earned on this money? Is it restricted? Is it encumbered in any way?
We
And there-
actually don't need to report it. These funds go in a separate pot. It's unrestricted.
Mr. President, and to respond to Councilman Seagrave, Renee is totally correct, but we did use some of this money to purchase a grant management software system for the interest, because we need some way to keep track of not only this money, but all of our federal grants. And so we've spent, I think it was, how much was it, Renee? Yeah, so that much, but there's, I mean, we continue to earn interest on it, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seagrave. Excellent question. Mr. Escabel.
Just to dovetail on what we were talking about with the directors and their lists that they were going to give us, anytime that there's extra money out there, you always seem to get a lot of wants besides the needs. And I would just ask that they stick to what are needs.
I agree, and I think Renee had indicated that that was her number one priority as well, to make sure any requests fit within the guidelines. Any other comments or questions? Well, again, thank you both, Renee. Thank you, Robin. Great presentation. I know we're all interested in this. We all want to make sure we're good stewards and transparent, and a very informative discussion, and there'll be more of these, I'm sure. With that, I'll adjourn the work session and ask everyone to please have a good weekend. Thank you.